When I inherited my uncle's weathered boathouse on Lighthouse Point Bay, I never imagined it would lead to transforming an entire waterfront community through patience, proper legal channels, and genuine cooperation. What started as a simple property dispute became a masterclass in how neighbors can work together to solve problems that benefit everyone. My name is David Chen, and at 48 I'm a retired marine engineer who learned that sometimes the most powerful tool isn't fighting back, it's building bridges. 6 months ago I inherited Uncle Robert's 1950s boathouse on the eastern shore of Lighthouse Point Bay in coastal Maine. This wasn't a luxury property. We're talking about a genuine working fisherman's structure that Uncle Robert built with salvaged materials after returning from Korea. The boathouse sat on a weird, beautiful stretch of rocky coastline, weathered gray by decades of salt spray and nor'easters. My plan was straightforward: restore the building as a workshop and maybe offer boat repair services to local fishermen. Nothing complicated, nothing that would disturb the peaceful rhythm of this small coastal community. That's when I encountered Patricia Westbrook, the president of the Lighthouse Point Residents Association. Patricia, 52, drove a pristine silver Volvo and lived in one of the contemporary homes built in the 1990s when developers transformed the area from working waterfront to upscale residential community. She had a background in real estate law and carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to having her expertise respected. Our first meeting occurred on a foggy Tuesday morning while I was examining the boathouse foundation. I heard footsteps on the gravel path and looked up to see a well-dressed woman approaching with a clipboard and a practiced smile. "Welcome to Lighthouse Point," she said, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely certain I belonged there. "I'm Patricia Westbrook, president of our Residents Association. I wanted to discuss bringing your property into compliance with community standards." I stood up, brushing concrete dust from my hands, and tried to be neighborly. "Morning, ma'am. David Chen. Beautiful spot you have here." "Indeed it is," she replied, then shifted into what I recognized as prepared remarks. "I've reviewed your property records and we need to address several zoning concerns. The current structure doesn't meet modern setback requirements, and any restoration work would need approval from our Architectural Review Committee. Now, I've dealt with enough bureaucracy in my engineering career to know when someone's trying to establish dominance through procedural intimidation. But I also knew that jumping to conclusions rarely leads anywhere productive. "I appreciate the information," I said, pulling out Uncle Robert's old property deed. "This boathouse has been here since 1952, long before the residential development. I believe it's grandfathered under existing use provisions." Patricia's expression tightened slightly. "Grandfathered status doesn't exempt you from safety standards or community aesthetics. This area has evolved beyond its industrial past, Mr. Chen. We have property values to consider." That evening I called my attorney friend Sarah Martinez for advice. "David," she said after reviewing the documents I emailed, "your uncle's property rights are solid, but community relations matter in a small town. Maybe try working with them instead of against them." Patricia didn't wait long to formalize her concerns. Within a week, I received a letter from the Residents Association requesting a meeting to discuss non-conforming structures and community standards. The letter was professionally written and technically polite, but the underlying message was clear: conform or face opposition. Instead of responding defensively, I decided to visit the local historical society. The librarian, Mrs. Eleanor Morse, was delighted to share the area's maritime history. "Your uncle was quite the character," she said, pulling out old photographs. "He helped rescue 3 families during the blizzard of '78, using that boathouse as a staging area." The photos showed Uncle Robert's boathouse serving as a community anchor point during various emergencies over the decades: fishermen storing gear, rescue operations, even serving as a neighborhood hurricane shelter. This wasn't just a building. It was part of the community's resilience infrastructure. Armed with this historical context, I requested a meeting with Patricia to discuss a collaborative approach. We met at the local coffee shop on a rainy Thursday morning, neutral territory where we could talk without the formal atmosphere of association meetings. "I've been researching the history of my uncle's property," I began, spreading out copies of the Historical Society's photographs. "It seems this boathouse has served the community in various ways over the years." Patricia examined the photos with genuine interest. I wasn't aware of the rescue operations. That's actually quite impressive. I'm not looking to create problems, I continued, but I also believe this building has value beyond just property considerations. What if we could find a way to preserve its historical significance while addressing your community's concerns? That conversation marked the beginning of what would become a months-long collaboration. Patricia, despite our initial tensions, proved to be genuinely committed to the community's welfare. When she understood that I wasn't trying to establish a commercial operation that would disrupt the neighborhood's character, her attitude shifted from defensive to constructive. We established a working committee that included Patricia, myself, 2 other association board members, and Mrs. Morse from the Historical Society. The group met weekly to develop what we called the Lighthouse Point Heritage Plan. The plan addressed everyone's concerns through creative compromise. The boathouse would be restored using materials and techniques that maintained its historical appearance while meeting modern safety standards. In exchange, I agreed to include interpretive signage about the area's maritime history and open the building for community tours. During the annual Heritage Days Festival, the Residents Association agreed to apply for matching funds from the state's Coastal Preservation Program, effectively turning a potential conflict into a community asset. Patricia's legal expertise proved invaluable in navigating the grant application process. The restoration process became a community project. Local carpenter Tom Briggs, whose grandfather had fished with Uncle Robert, volunteered his expertise in traditional boat-building techniques. The marine supply store donated weather-resistant paint in historically accurate colors. Even some of the newer residents contributed labor and materials. During the restoration, we discovered that Uncle Robert had meticulously documented the building's construction and modifications over 70 years. His records revealed that several structural changes had actually improved the building's storm resistance beyond what modern codes required. Patricia and I worked together to present this information to the county planning department, resulting in the boathouse being designated as a contributing historic structure with special preservation status. This designation actually increased property values throughout the neighborhood by establishing Lighthouse Point as a historically significant community. The project's success led to broader community initiatives. We established the Lighthouse Point Maritime Heritage Society, which now manages a small museum in the restored boathouse. The society offers educational programs for local schools and maintains a collection of artifacts from the area's fishing industry. Property values did increase, but not because we eliminated historical buildings, because we preserved them. The community's unique character attracted buyers specifically, interested in living somewhere with authentic maritime heritage rather than generic coastal development. Patricia and I developed a genuine working relationship that extended beyond the boathouse project. When other property disputes arose in the community, we found ourselves serving as informal mediators, helping neighbors find collaborative solutions instead of adversarial ones. The annual Heritage Days Festival now draws visitors from throughout coastal Maine, bringing economic benefits to local businesses while celebrating the community's authentic history. Uncle Robert's Boathouse serves as the festival's centerpiece, hosting demonstrations of traditional boat building and maritime skills. 1 year later, the Lighthouse Point Residents Association won the state's Community Cooperation Award for our collaborative preservation efforts. Patricia and I accepted the award together, representing what the state called an exemplary model of how development and preservation can work in harmony. The experience taught me that most community conflicts stem from misunderstanding, rather than genuine incompatibility of interests. When people feel heard and respected, when they understand that change doesn't necessarily threaten what they value, cooperation becomes possible. Patricia later told me that our project changed her perspective on community leadership. I used to think my job was protecting what we had, she said. Now I realize it's about building what we could have together. The boathouse restoration was completed on budget and on time, transforming a potential eyesore into a community asset that honors both history and contemporary needs. The building now serves as a workshop where I repair boats for local fishermen, a meeting space for community groups, and a symbol of what neighbors can accomplish when they work together, instead of against each other. On quiet mornings, I sit on the boathouse dock watching the sunrise over Lighthouse Point Bay, listening to the foghorns and feeling Uncle Robert's presence in the salt breeze. The sound of harbor seals calling from the nearby ledges mingles with the distant voices of children learning to sail in the protected cove. The community has grown stronger through facing challenges together, rather than letting them divide us. Property values have indeed increased, but so has neighborhood cohesion, historical awareness, and collective pride in what makes Lighthouse Point special. Last month, a waterfront community from the next county contacted us for advice on resolving their own development versus preservation conflicts. Patricia and I now serve as volunteer consultants, helping other coastal communities find collaborative solutions to similar challenges. The most rewarding outcome has been watching younger families move to Lighthouse Point specifically because of its reputation for community cooperation and historical preservation. These new residents contribute fresh energy while respecting the area's maritime character, creating a healthy balance between tradition and progress. The lighthouse that gives our community its name still operates as a working navigation aid, just as Uncle Robert's boathouse continues serving the community's practical needs. Both structures represent the same principle. Sometimes the old ways of doing things, when properly maintained and adapted, serve us better than replacing them with something entirely new. The Heritage Society's educational programs now reach over 500 students annually, teaching maritime history, traditional crafts, and environmental stewardship. Several graduates have pursued careers in marine science and historic preservation, carrying forward the community's commitment to coastal conservation. Uncle Robert's detailed records inspired other property owners to research their buildings' histories, leading to the discovery of 3 additional structures eligible for historic designation. The community's heritage tourism efforts now generate enough revenue to fund ongoing preservation projects without raising association fees. Patricia recently ran for town selectman on a platform of collaborative development, winning by the largest margin in recent memory. Her campaign emphasized the Lighthouse Point model of working with property owners to find solutions that benefit everyone rather than imposing one-size-fits-all restrictions. The success of our collaboration attracted attention from the state's Community Development Office, which now uses Lighthouse Point as a case study in their training programs for local officials. Universities studying conflict resolution have sent researchers to document our process and outcomes. But the most meaningful measure of success comes from the community itself. Neighbors who barely spoke before the boathouse project now organize potluck dinners, volunteer together on conservation projects, and support each other through personal challenges. The social capital we built while solving one problem has made us more resilient in facing others. The restored boathouse hosts monthly Skillshare workshops where community members teach each other traditional crafts, gardening techniques, home maintenance, and other practical knowledge. These gatherings strengthen the informal networks that make neighborhoods into genuine communities. Children who participated in the Heritage Society's programs have become the community's most enthusiastic historians, creating a youth docent program that guides visitors through Lighthouse Point's Maritime Heritage Trail. Their energy and pride in local history ensures that future generations will continue valuing what makes this place special. The working waterfront that Uncle Robert knew has evolved, but it hasn't disappeared. Commercial fishermen still use the harbor alongside recreational boaters, and the boathouse continues serving both communities. The balance we achieved between preservation and progress has become a template for other coastal areas facing similar pressures. Patricia and I often reflect on how differently things might have turned out if we'd approached our initial disagreement as a zero-sum conflict, rather than a problem to be solved collaboratively. The community would have been poorer in every measurable way, economically, socially, and culturally. The fog still rolls in from the Atlantic on summer evenings, wrapping Lighthouse Point in the same gray shroud that Uncle Robert knew, but now it reveals a community strengthened by learning to work together, where historical preservation and contemporary needs support rather than compete with each other. When visitors ask about the secret to our community's success, I tell them it's not complicated. Listen more than you talk. Assume good intentions until proven otherwise. And remember that the best solutions usually serve everyone's interests. Uncle Robert's boathouse stands as proof that old structures, when properly cared for, can anchor communities for generations to come. The Ripple Effects, Years 3 through 5. The true measure of our collaborative approach became evident in the years following the boathouse restoration. What started as a single property dispute had catalyzed a fundamental shift in how Lighthouse Point approached community challenges, creating a model that would influence coastal communities throughout New England. By year 3, the Heritage Society had expanded beyond anyone's initial expectations. Dr. Rebecca Hartwell, a maritime historian from the University of Maine, approached us about establishing a field research station at the boathouse. Her proposal would bring graduate students to study traditional fishing methods, coastal ecology, and community-based conservation practices. Patricia initially expressed concerns about increased academic activity, disrupting the neighborhood's residential character. Rather than rejecting the proposal outright, we convened our now familiar working committee format to explore how university partnership could benefit everyone. The resulting agreement created the Lighthouse Point Research Collaborative, housed in Uncle Robert's boathouse during off-season months when tourism activity was minimal. Graduate students conducted research that directly benefited the community: water quality monitoring, invasive species mapping, and documenting oral histories from longtime residents. The research station attracted modest but steady funding from marine science grants, providing resources for additional community programs. More importantly, it established Lighthouse Point as a recognized center for studying sustainable coastal development, bringing national attention to our collaborative governance model. Tom Briggs, the carpenter who'd helped restore the boathouse, proposed establishing a traditional boat-building workshop in the adjacent shed that Uncle Robert had used for gear storage. Working with the research station, Tom developed a curriculum that combined historical craftsmanship with modern marine engineering principles. The boat-building program attracted participants from across New England, creating a modest but sustainable economic boost for local businesses. Participants stayed at the area's bed and breakfasts, ate at local restaurants, and purchased materials from regional suppliers. The program's reputation for excellence drew master craftspeople who shared their knowledge. Through weekend workshops and summer intensives, Patricia's evolution as a community leader became increasingly evident as she successfully advocated for Lighthouse Point's inclusion in the state's Smart Growth Demonstration Program. This designation brought technical assistance and funding for infrastructure improvements that supported both heritage, tourism, and everyday residential needs. The smart growth planning process itself became another exercise in collaborative problem-solving. Instead of hiring outside consultants to dictate development standards, the community worked with state planners to design guidelines that reflected local values and priorities. The planning charrettes, held in the boathouse's main room, drew participation from residents who'd never before engaged with municipal politics. Patricia's facilitation skills, honed during our initial negotiations, proved invaluable in helping diverse community voices contribute to the planning process. One unexpected outcome was discovering that several longtime residents possessed expertise that could benefit the entire community. Eleanor Morse revealed that her late husband had been a civil engineer who'd designed storm drainage systems for coastal communities. Her technical knowledge proved crucial in developing flood-resilient strategies that protected both historic and contemporary structures. Frank DeLuca, a retired lobsterman, shared decades of observations about local water conditions, tidal patterns, and seasonal wildlife behavior. His empirical knowledge complemented the graduate students' scientific research, creating a more complete understanding of the bay's ecosystem. The community's collaborative approach attracted attention from the Maine State Housing Authority, which selected Lighthouse Point for a pilot program addressing affordable housing in coastal communities. Rather than imposing generic solutions, the program worked within our established framework for balancing preservation with contemporary needs. The affordable housing initiative faced initial resistance from residents concerned about changing neighborhood character. Patricia and I organized a series of informational meetings that included presentations from other coastal communities that had successfully integrated affordable housing while maintaining their distinct identities. The resulting design guidelines required new affordable units to complement the area's maritime aesthetic while meeting contemporary efficiency and accessibility standards. Local contractors learned specialized techniques for building affordable housing that enhanced rather than compromised community character. The first affordable housing project, A cluster of 4 small homes designed to resemble traditional fishermen's cottages received state recognition for innovative design and community integration. Young families who'd grown up in Lighthouse Point but couldn't afford market-rate housing were able to remain in the community, maintaining the intergenerational connections that give places their authentic character. Year 4 brought new challenges that tested our collaborative problem-solving skills. Climate change impacts became increasingly evident through more frequent storm surges, shifting seasonal patterns and changes in marine species distribution. The community faced decisions about coastal armoring, managed retreat, and adaptation strategies that would affect both property values and environmental quality. Rather than responding to climate threats reactively, Lighthouse Point proactively engaged with the state's climate adaptation planning process. The research station provided scientific data, while longtime residents contributed historical knowledge about past storm events and natural coastal changes. The resulting climate adaptation plan balanced hard engineering solutions with nature-based approaches, creating layered defenses that protected both built infrastructure and natural habitats. Living shorelines using native vegetation complemented strategic rock armoring in areas requiring stronger protection. The adaptation planning process revealed that Uncle Robert's boathouse, built to withstand decades of nor'easters, actually demonstrated resilient design principles that could inform contemporary construction. The building's elevated foundation, storm shutters, and reinforced connections became models for retrofitting other structures. Patricia spearheaded efforts to secure federal resilience funding, navigating complex application processes while ensuring that climate adaptation investments supported, rather than undermined, the community's heritage character. Her persistence resulted in Lighthouse Point receiving one of the largest coastal resilience grants in Maine's history. The Resilience Project created construction jobs for local workers while improving protection for all community members. Contractors learned specialized techniques for historic building retrofits, skills that proved marketable throughout coastal Maine as other communities faced similar adaptation challenges. By year 5, Lighthouse Point had become a recognized model for community-based coastal management. The National Trust for Historic Preservation featured our boathouse restoration in their annual report as an exemplary case of preserving working waterfront heritage while adapting to contemporary needs. The success attracted academic researchers studying community resilience, social capital formation, and collaborative governance. While we welcomed scholarly attention, Patricia and I worked to ensure that research activities contributed to rather than extracted from community resources. A documentary filmmaker from Boston approached us about creating a short film highlighting Lighthouse Point's collaborative approach to coastal challenges. The resulting 20-minute documentary, anchored Community Resilience on Maine's Coast, premiered at the Camden International Film Festival and was subsequently distributed through environmental education networks. The film's success led to speaking invitations at conferences focused on coastal management, historic preservation, and community development. Patricia and I began traveling together to share our experiences, always emphasizing that successful collaboration requires adapting principles to local contexts rather than replicating specific solutions. Our consulting work with other coastal communities revealed common patterns in successful collaborative projects: early engagement of diverse stakeholders, transparent communication about constraints and opportunities, flexible problem-solving approaches, and long-term commitment to relationship building. We also observed common failure modes: rushing to solutions before building trust, excluding key voices from decision-making processes, focusing on technical fixes while ignoring social dynamics, and abandoning collaborative approaches when initial results didn't meet expectations. The most rewarding aspect of our consulting work was witnessing other communities discover their own capacity for collaborative problem-solving. Just as our initial boathouse dispute had catalyzed broader changes in Lighthouse Point, other communities found that successfully addressing one challenge built confidence and skills for tackling larger issues. The Heritage Society's educational programs evolved to include leadership development components, teaching young people skills in facilitation, conflict resolution, and community organizing. Several program graduates pursued careers in community development, carrying forward collaborative approaches to new contexts. Local schools began incorporating Lighthouse Point's governance model into civics curricula, Using our community meetings as case studies in democratic participation, students conducted oral history projects with community elders, documenting both the area's maritime heritage and the more recent evolution toward collaborative decision-making. The research station's work contributed to peer-reviewed publications on community-based coastal management, establishing Lighthouse Point's reputation in academic circles while ensuring that scholarly work served practical community needs. Graduate students' research provided data for grant applications, policy advocacy, and long-term planning initiatives. Uncle Robert's Boathouse had become more than a restored historic building. It served as a symbol of what communities could accomplish when they approached challenges with patience, creativity, and mutual respect. Visitors often commented on the building's sense of rootedness and authenticity, qualities that reflected not just physical preservation, but the community's commitment to honoring its past while building its future. The working waterfront that Uncle Robert knew continued evolving, but its essential character persisted. Commercial fishing vessels shared the harbor with research boats, recreational craft, and the traditional boats built in Tom's workshop. The diversity of uses created a more resilient local economy while maintaining the area's maritime identity. Property values throughout Lighthouse Point had indeed increased, but not through exclusionary development that displaced longtime residents. Instead, the community's reputation for successful, collaborative governance and authentic historic character attracted buyers who valued community engagement over isolation. The annual Heritage Days festival grew into a regional destination, generating significant economic impact for local businesses while celebrating the area's authentic maritime culture. Unlike generic waterfront festivals, Heritage Days maintained its educational focus and connection to working waterfront traditions. Festival participants could observe traditional boat-building demonstrations, learn navigation techniques using historical instruments, participate in seaweed harvesting and processing workshops, and listen to oral histories from retired fishermen and their families. These authentic experiences attracted visitors interested in genuine cultural immersion rather than superficial tourism. The festival's success inspired similar events in other coastal communities, creating a network of heritage tourism destinations that supported each other through cross-promotion and shared best practices. Patricia coordinated this informal network, applying her organizational skills to regional collaboration. As I write this account, Uncle Robert's Boathouse continues serving multiple community functions: workshop for boat repairs, meeting space for community organizations, research station for graduate students, and symbol of what collaborative problem-solving can accomplish. The building's daily rhythms reflect the community's evolution from potential conflict to productive partnership. Morning often finds me in the workshop section, repairing fishing gear or working on boat maintenance projects. The familiar sounds of hand tools, the smell of marine varnish, and the feel of seasoned wood connect me to Uncle Robert's legacy while serving contemporary community needs. Afternoon might bring a Heritage Society board meeting in the main room, where we plan educational programs, review grant applications, or discuss partnerships with other cultural organizations. These gatherings blend practical planning with reflection on our mission and values. Evening sometimes hosts research presentations, where graduate students share findings with community members, creating dialogue between academic knowledge and local experience. These sessions embody the Boathouse's role in bridging different ways of understanding coastal environments and communities. The fog still rolls in from the Atlantic on summer evenings, wrapping Lighthouse Point in gray mystery that has inspired generations of residents and visitors. But now it reveals a community that has learned to navigate challenges through collaboration rather than conflict, building resilience that will serve future generations. When I sit on the boathouse dock at sunset, watching harbor seals surface in the cove and listening to the foghorn's rhythmic warning, I'm reminded that Uncle Robert's greatest gift wasn't just the building itself, but the example of patient craftsmanship and community service it represents. The restoration project that began as a simple property dispute became a catalyst for community transformation, demonstrating that even modest collaborative efforts can generate changes far beyond their original scope. Uncle Robert's Boathouse stands as proof that old foundations, when properly maintained and adapted, can support new possibilities. For generations to come, the community's Collaborative approach has created what sociologists call social infrastructure, the networks of relationships and shared institutions that enable communities to function effectively and adapt to changing circumstances. This invisible foundation proves as important as physical infrastructure in determining long-term community sustainability. Our success has attracted interest from policy researchers studying rural development, coastal management, and community resilience. While we appreciate scholarly attention, our primary focus remains serving local needs and maintaining the trust that makes collaboration possible. The most important lesson from our experience may be that successful collaboration requires ongoing commitment rather than one-time agreements. Trust builds through consistent behavior over time, and collaborative relationships require regular maintenance just like physical infrastructure. As coastal communities throughout New England face similar pressures from development, climate change, and economic transition, Lighthouse Point's example demonstrates that thoughtful collaboration can create outcomes that serve multiple interests simultaneously. The key lies not in avoiding conflicts but in addressing them constructively through processes that strengthen rather than divide communities. Uncle Robert's boathouse continues weathering storms, both meteorological and social, standing as tangible evidence that structures built with care and maintained with commitment can anchor communities through decades of change. The building's persistence reminds us that some things are worth preserving not just for their own sake but for what they make possible in the lives of others. The next decade, scaling. Collaboration, years 6 through 10. The lessons learned from Uncle Robert's boathouse restoration continued rippling outward, creating opportunities and challenges none of us had anticipated. As our collaborative model gained recognition, Lighthouse Point found itself at the center of broader conversations about rural development, coastal resilience, and community-led governance. Year 6 brought an unexpected test when a major telecommunications company approached the town about installing a cellular tower to improve coverage along this stretch of coast. The proposal immediately divided the community. Some residents needed better connectivity for home businesses and emergency communications, while others worried about visual impacts on the historic landscape. Patricia and I recognized this as exactly the type of issue that had historically torn communities apart. Instead of allowing positions to harden into opposing camps, we quickly organized what we now called a collaborative inquiry process and a structured approach to exploring complex issues before jumping to solutions. The inquiry process began with information gathering. We invited telecommunications engineers to explain coverage gaps and technical requirements. Historic preservation specialists discussed visual impact mitigation strategies. Emergency services personnel shared data about communication failures during recent storms. Most importantly, we facilitated small group discussions where residents could express concerns and explore possibilities without pressure to reach immediate conclusions. Dr. Sarah Kim, a Korean-American environmental planner who'd moved to Lighthouse Point after participating in our climate adaptation project, emerged as a crucial voice in the tower discussions. Her background in sustainable infrastructure design helped bridge technical requirements with community aesthetics. The question isn't whether we need better communications, Sarah observed during one community meeting. It's how we integrate necessary infrastructure with the character that makes this place special. Working with the telecommunications company, Sarah developed a proposal to disguise the tower as a historically appropriate structure that could also serve community functions. The final design resembled a traditional lighthouse, complete with a functional beacon that enhanced rather than compromised the area's maritime character. The tower lighthouse hybrid became fully functional by year 7, providing improved cellular coverage while housing weather monitoring equipment for the research station and serving as a backup power source for emergency operations. The telecommunications company's willingness to invest in custom design reflected their recognition that community acceptance was worth the additional expense. More significantly, the tower project demonstrated our community's growing sophistication in collaborative problem-solving. Residents who'd initially held strong opposing views worked together to develop a solution that addressed everyone's core concerns. The process strengthened rather than strained community relationships. The tower project's success attracted attention from infrastructure planners dealing with similar challenges throughout rural America. Patricia began receiving invitations to serve on state advisory committees focused on rural telecommunications and community development. Her expertise in facilitation and consensus building proved valuable in policy contexts where technical solutions required community acceptance. Meanwhile, the boathouse continued evolving as a hub for multiple community functions. Tom Briggs expanded the boat-building workshop to include programs for at-risk youth from nearby cities, teaching traditional craftsmanship skills while providing mentorship and connection to maritime heritage. The program, funded through a combination of state grants and private donations, demonstrated measurable improvements in participants' academic performance and career readiness. Elena Rodriguez, a former program participant who'd gone on to study marine engineering, returned as an instructor, bringing both technical expertise and lived experience of the program's transformative potential. Her bilingual skills helped the program serve Latino families from inland communities, expanding its reach and impact. "Working with my hands on these boats taught me I could build anything," Elena told visitors during Heritage Days. "But more importantly, it taught me I belonged in a community that valued what I could contribute." Year 8 brought a more complex challenge, when the state announced plans for offshore wind development in federal waters visible from Lighthouse Point's shoreline. The project promised clean energy and economic benefits but raised concerns about visual impacts, fishing disruption, and changes to the area's maritime character. Rather than immediately taking a position for or against offshore wind, the community organized an extended inquiry process that included site visits to existing offshore wind installations, discussions with fishermen from areas with wind development, and technical presentations about project specifics. The inquiry revealed that community members held diverse views based on different priorities: climate change mitigation, economic opportunity, preservation of scenic values, and protection of fishing grounds. Instead of trying to reconcile these differences through compromise, we explored whether the offshore wind project could be designed to advance multiple community values simultaneously. Working with wind developers, fishing organizations, and state agencies, Lighthouse Point helped design an innovative community benefit agreement that addressed local concerns while supporting regional clean energy goals. The agreement included guaranteed fishing vessel access corridors, funding for marine research that served both industry and environmental monitoring needs, and revenue sharing that supported local infrastructure improvements. The community benefit negotiations required skills we'd developed through years of collaborative practice: patient listening, creative problem solving, and commitment to solutions that served multiple interests. The final agreement became a model for other coastal communities facing similar offshore development decisions. By year 9, Lighthouse Point's reputation for collaborative governance had evolved into a cottage industry. Patricia established a consulting firm specializing in community facilitation and consensus building, while I focused on technical aspects of historic preservation and adaptive reuse. Together, we worked with dozens of communities throughout New England and the maritime provinces. Our consulting work revealed that successful collaboration required more than good intentions and facilitation skills. Communities needed what we called collaborative infrastructure, formal and informal systems that supported ongoing dialogue, shared decision-making, and conflict resolution. This infrastructure took years to develop and required constant maintenance. The Heritage Society launched a fellowship program that brought emerging community leaders to Lighthouse Point for intensive training in collaborative governance techniques. Fellows spent 3 months participating in local decision-making processes, learning facilitation skills, and developing projects they could implement in their home communities. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a political scientist from Bowdoin College, began studying Lighthouse Point as part of a broader research project on democratic innovation in rural communities. Her preliminary findings suggested that our collaborative approach had measurably increased civic participation, community satisfaction, and collective problem-solving capacity. What's remarkable about Lighthouse Point isn't just that conflicts get resolved, Dr. Walsh observed. It's that the community has developed systems for preventing many conflicts from arising in the first place through early dialogue and shared planning processes. The research attracted additional academic interest, leading to a partnership with the Kettering Foundation to document and disseminate our collaborative governance model. The partnership provided funding for enhanced community programs while ensuring that our experiences informed broader conversations about democratic practice. Year 10 marked a decade since the initial boathouse restoration project, prompting community-wide reflection on what we'd accomplished and where we wanted to go next. The anniversary celebration, held in and around Uncle Robert's boathouse, drew participants from throughout our extended network of collaborators, consultants, and community partners. Former conflicts that had once seemed intractable now appeared as stepping stones in our community's development. The cellular tower disguised as a lighthouse had become a beloved landmark. The affordable housing cluster was indistinguishable from market-rate homes in architectural quality and community integration. The offshore wind project generated revenue that funded additional preservation and resilience initiatives. Most importantly, collaborative problem-solving had become Lighthouse Point's default approach to community challenges. New residents quickly learned that rushing to adversarial positions was less effective than engaging in dialogue processes that typically generated better outcomes for everyone involved. At the anniversary celebration also highlighted how our local success had contributed to regional change. The network of coastal communities using collaborative governance approaches had grown to include more than 20 municipalities throughout Maine and the Maritime provinces. These communities shared best practices, provided mutual support during crises, and advocated collectively for policies that supported their shared values. Uncle Robert's Boathouse had become a pilgrimage destination for community organizers, local officials, and academics studying democratic innovation. While we welcomed visitors and shared our experiences generously, we remained focused on serving local needs and maintaining the trust that made collaboration possible. The building itself continued weathering storms, both literal and metaphorical, its seasoned timbers and careful maintenance enabling it to serve multiple generations of users. Recent structural assessments confirmed that Uncle Robert's craftsmanship, combined with ongoing care and periodic upgrades, would support community activities for many decades to come. Tom Briggs, now in his 70s but still actively teaching traditional boat-building techniques, often reflected on how the restoration project had transformed not just a building, but an entire approach to community life. "We didn't just fix up an old boathouse," he observed. "We learned how to fix up our whole way of working together." The maritime heritage that Uncle Robert represented continued evolving rather than simply being preserved. Working fishing boats still used the harbor alongside research vessels, traditional craft built in the workshop, and recreational boats owned by newer residents. The diversity of uses created economic resilience while maintaining authentic connections to the sea. Climate change impacts continued requiring adaptation, but the community faced these challenges with confidence, built through years of collaborative problem-solving. Sea level rise projections informed long-term planning decisions. Changing weather patterns influenced infrastructure investments. Shifting marine ecosystems shaped fishing and tourism strategies. Rather than responding to climate change reactively through crisis management, Lighthouse Point had developed proactive adaptation capabilities that served as a model for other coastal communities. The combination of scientific research, traditional knowledge, and collaborative planning created particularly robust responses to environmental challenges. The success had attracted new residents who specifically sought communities with strong collaborative governance systems and authentic historic character. These newcomers contributed fresh perspectives and skills while generally respecting established community norms and processes. Patricia's evolution from defensive association president to collaborative governance expert reflected broader changes in how residents understood community leadership. Authority increasingly came from proven ability to facilitate productive dialogue and build consensus rather than from formal positions or procedural expertise. The ripple effects of our initial collaboration continued expanding in ways none of us had anticipated. When we first sat down to discuss Uncle Robert's Boathouse, what began as a simple property dispute had catalyzed changes that influenced regional development patterns, academic research, and policy discussions at state and federal levels. Yet the most meaningful impacts remained local and personal. Neighbors who might never have spoken now served together on various committees and working groups. Children grew up expecting that community disagreements would be addressed through dialogue rather than conflict. Adults developed skills in listening, facilitation, and creative problem-solving that served them in all aspects of life. The fog still rolls in from the Atlantic on summer evenings, wrapping Lighthouse Point in the same gray mystery that inspired Uncle Robert and countless others who've called this place home. But now it reveals a community that has learned to navigate uncertainty through collaboration, building resilience that honors the past while embracing an unknowable future. As I write these words in the boathouse workshop, surrounded by the tools and materials of traditional craftsmanship, I'm reminded daily that Uncle Robert's greatest legacy wasn't the building itself, but the example of patient, skillful work in service of something larger than himself. The collaborative community we've built stands as the most fitting tribute to his memory and the most hopeful gift we can offer to future generations. The lighthouse beam that sweeps across our bay each evening, now enhanced by LED technology but following the same ancient rhythm, reminds us that some things endure by adapting rather than resisting change. Uncle Robert's boathouse, like the community it helped create, demonstrates that thoughtful evolution can preserve what matters most, while embracing what's needed next.